Okay, we are here for our very first sponsor webinar of the 2026 conference season with our platinum sponsor. Your book is your hook from thought to sales in 90 days with the CEO, Jennifer Wilkov. Thank you so much for continuing to support our organization and our community and for helping us keep content coming out all the time and prices for our events as low as we can keep them to make them as accessible for as many people as possible. So I am so excited to hear from you. I'm not going to take up any more time except for to say make sure you go check out the offerings that Jennifer has for you on our sponsors page, womeninpublishingsummit.com/sponsors. She's got some exciting workshops and things coming up that I'm sure you'll tell us about. And I'm so excited to hear this presentation because it's so enlightening to see that it's not just about a book. It's about the book and then all of these wonderful things that you're going to tell us about. So thank you, Jennifer. And the one quick thing, if you have questions, use the Q&A box and put them in there, and we will get to all of them at the end of the presentation. All right, thank you.
Hi. Hello there. Hi, everybody. It is such a thrill and a pleasure for me to be with you today at the Women in Publishing Summit kickoff. You know, I have been sponsoring and been a part of Women in Publishing for a very long time. I am super excited to be with you so we can actually talk about an incredibly important topic. And so one of the things that I love to do is, as you know, if you've been with me before, is I love to share slides and I love to take them down. So the piece that I want you to know is don't panic if I do that because the slides are working and everything's working well. So let's get started so we can start our journey today together to talk about the many ways to use your book as your hook. Now, one of the most important things about using your book as your hook is actually to put you in a great position with your own book. And when I say your book is your hook, yes, I'm obviously talking about my brand, but at the same time, I'm talking about what you need to be able to do, right? Alexa told you who I am and what I've done. And I've actually been consulting and assisting and supporting writers for 24 years while being a #1 international best-selling author, an award-winning writer, and also being a producer and helping other people build out their brands and communities with their marketing, not just writing, publishing, and all the other things that I do. So why are we here today? Because one of the most important things is that I see too many writers actually getting themselves in awkward positions. So today, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about what your book is your hook really means and how it transforms your book from a product into a platform. Now, if we actually do that, we're going to succeed, right? And so I'm going to take you back to the slides for a moment, right? So one of the things that I want you to understand is when you actually understand what your book is your hook does, then you understand how to transform your book from a product into a platform. And why publishing is just the beginning is really important. So we're going to dive into that because I want you to understand what to do next to maximize its value. Now, when we actually get into it, I'm going to take you through the 6 strategic ways to use your book as your hook. Alexa, I talk to all the time. We sit there and we actually talk about, well, you could do this, you could do that, right? But one of the things that you want to keep in mind is there are so many ways that you can actually do this, from elevating your visibility, using it as a business card, turning it into speaking, using it with the media, getting revenue, and actually leaving the impact you intended to. So we're going to also talk very quickly about some real examples and case studies about some authors that actually do this, right? And so you can see it in action with writers that you know. Now, the other thing I want you to think about is I don't want this to just be a talk. This is not my intention. And so I really don't like it when I'm actually in something that's just to learn. I want you to interact. I want you to put questions in the chat. I want you to also, because I'm going to answer them at the end. I also want you to identify some of this stuff for yourself. I want you to figure out, well, which hook or which ones are right for you for your goals and your audience. And I also want you to think about, well, the simple steps that you could actually do when you leave here, because that's my biggest focus is what can you do when you get out of here, away from this talk, so that you'll do something. Now, what's the takeaway? I want you to actually understand how to transform this most powerful marketing tool that you've created, this conversation starter, this credibility builder, right? That's the hook. It keeps you attracting what you said you wanted, either the people, the platforms, the possibilities, or all of them that you deserve. Now, I want you to think about yourself. How many of you publish and stop? For those of you who haven't yet done that, what's really important is to understand that there's much more runway after you actually do that. And so what we want to do is we actually want to take ourselves into the publishing journey that comes after that, so that you can start thinking about your book in so many other ways that I'm talking about. I would love for you to think about, if you knew how to use it, what are the doors you want to open? What are the doors you want to open? Take a moment and put in the chat with everybody else, what are the doors you want to, that you want to open? Take a moment. Good. Public speaking. What else? Podcasting. Sponsorships. That's it. Lots of ideas, lots of things to do. And it doesn't matter what your book is, right? Author visits, great. Offering more workshops in person, online, thought leadership, great, great. Keep them coming. Because when you actually start to think about it, you can bring it about. And your book can actually put you in a great situation to use it as your business card, the greatest one you have, with people you don't even know yet, right? The conversation starter in the room you network in, whether it's virtually online here at Women in Publishing, or whether you do it somewhere else. And it can also be your opportunity magnet. Wow, you're an author? Well, we're looking for somebody. You know, one of the things that I love is actually being a conference producer on my own. And one of the things that I know is just because somebody has a book doesn't mean that they're a great speaker, but it gives them a heck of a lot of credibility. Did you know that? Here's the stat on the speaking, just for those. I'll interject this here. 9 times out of 10, the person with the book actually gets selected as the speaker because they are perceived as having more credibility and authority than the other people who don't, whether they're a good speaker or not. So opportunity matters, right? So what I want you to really think about is, what does your book as your hook mean? Well, you got to have a book, right? And you got to have a hook. And then you have to figure out for yourself, Who are the people? Who are the opportunities? Where are they? What are they? And what are the platforms? What are the events you want to be in? What are your goals? For those of you who have a vision board, love vision boards, how does all of this work with your book and your goals? Writing a book and publishing a book is a great goal. Having the goals beyond that are what I'm talking about today, because I'm talking to you about more than marketing. I've spoken here at Women in Publishing about marketing, and I want you to think bigger. That is my goal. Get bigger, right? It's not, I'll just write it and they'll come. I'm sorry, that doesn't work. If a tree falls in the forest, nobody knows about it. You have got to do more. Well, it's just for credibility. I want to be able to tell people that I'm an author. That's great, but there's so much more you can do than just saying, well, I'm an author, right? And I'm done once it's published. Nope, sorry. There's so much more you could be doing if you actually want to meet the goals that you have beyond the book, right? So the book is the beginning of your next chapter. People will often say, well, I spent 10 years on my book. I understand that. And I give you a lot of credit. And I know it took a long time. What you do with the book is really the longevity of the book, not the writing of the book. The writing of the book is coalescing all of your ideas, imagination, and morals of the story for fiction, nonfiction, and children in a book, in a context, right? Now we're going to move beyond that and get it out into the world and share it, which is a business skill, which is about your book is your hook. So think about it in this way, right? You have a framework. You have writing, then you publish, then you leverage and you scale it. That is the framework for taking your book beyond just this particular stage of publishing. And it really works when you actually plan so that you have a plan and you don't plan to fail. That is so incredibly important. That's where the power part lives, is in the leverage of what you're going to do. You got to leverage what you got. So we're going to talk now about the 6 ways to use your book as your hook, as the different pieces I showed you in the overview, because I want to dig deeper into these and spend a lot of our time here. When you create a book, you actually define your message and you figure out what that message is. Are you going to spook somebody with your haunt? Are you going to romance somebody all the way to happily ever after? Are you going to create yourself after someone that you admire? Boy, I could be like her. Are you going to write nonfiction about some particular topic, everything from leadership to parenting, to a particular craft, to travel, all kinds of things? Defining your message is important about your book as much as it is about your brand. And understanding that visual identity for people is important, right? Your book is your hook is something that came out of a conversation I had very early on when I was actually starting to answer people's questions about the book I had. And they said, can you help me with my book? I want to be you. I want to this. I want to do that. And I basically said, well, you have to use your book as your hook. That was 24 years ago. And that was really what it was all about, was how are you going to actually use this book in a nonfiction way to position yourself as the go-to expert in your field? Well, if you're writing fiction, it also applies to you because there are so many conferences and opportunities for you to actually help other writers with your field, right? How do you actually craft that? How do you craft a thriller? How did you write this? How did you actually come up with your character development? People want to know, and there are lots of conference sessions that talk about that. Are you that person? Having that book is important to actually help you use it as your hook. You can also take your book and turn it into a signature talk, or take your talk and you can take it and make it a book, right? There are so many things that you can do to build out your brand. Use your book as your hook, extend what you're doing, and understand for yourself, wow, I didn't just do this, I created a whole thing. That's right. Look at all the things that are in the chat. TV series, launching a Substack, guiding national park trips, right? Doing YouTube and other types of sponsorships, affiliate programs, maximizing accessibility for diverse readers, all kinds of things. Those brands matter. They really matter. If you're going to use your book as a business card, right, then oftentimes we give the book to people because we actually want them to do something more with us, partner with us, maybe become a client of ours, or put us in front of others through their media, right? So if you're a book and you're actually a book that basically is in conjunction with a podcast that actually works and talks about exactly what you wrote about, that's a great, great place for you to actually give somebody, well, here's my book ahead of my podcast interview. And I want to make sure that we talk about what part of the story is on page 50. Okay, great. The other thing that's important is that you can also use it if you are at a trade show, if you are nonfiction, and if you're someone who basically is actually talking with a writers group. I also recommend book club. If you actually have a book that is something that is in market fiction or book club fiction or women's fiction or literary fiction, it opens doors for you. Hey, I could actually help you create a great event for your book club with my book club kit, right? The thing that's really important for a lot of people is to understand that there are a lot of people that don't throw books away. A lot. And sometimes people will say, well, you know what? You should read this book. Or they'll send a link, or they'll say, you should listen to this book, right? That is a business card. That gives you a great opportunity to actually extend beyond who you know to the people you don't. For those of you who want to speak, building a talk around the book you have is terrific, around the book's message itself. Building talks that lead into your next book are even greater. Why? Because you can do talks about your book for a long time. And you can introduce a new topic that you might actually be toying with for a new book. Do a talk, take the talk, reverse engineer it into a book. Now you have book 2, right? You can also make it into workshops. You can also make it into webinars. You can make it into trainings, retreats, memberships, all kinds of different venues for speaking. You can also use it as your keynote. If you go to very large events, people might either get a copy of your book. If you're in fiction and you go to a conference that's in person, you can sell your books in the bookstore, and you can also do a book signing for people when they buy it. There's so much more you can do with that book beyond just what you've published. think of it this way, right? Chapters become sessions. Stories become slides. If you're going to speak, think about breaking your book content down in this way so that it actually is not something that's redundant. It's repurposing the same content that you have into something that you can share in a different way. Speaking is vocalizing, and stories are how people learn. They love storytelling, and it really works. And you have all of the outlines you need from the stories that you're telling, whether you've actually broken down your story arc in your story, whether you talk about how you actually came up with the idea, what your audience has given you feedback on. I'll give you a great story. One of my clients, and actually someone I interviewed long time ago, on when I was actually on terrestrial radio on a show that reached far and wide across the globe. What was really fun was I interviewed the winner of the NaNoWriMo that year. And at the time, you got a publishing deal with Penguin Books and you won $5,000. So I actually interviewed Gail Foreman on my show the day where she went, became a New York Times bestseller. Now, her first book was unknown, not really well recognized like this one was. Well, everybody started saying the same thing. What did she have? Right. So Gail was actually making the rounds, talking to people about her book. And I asked her a couple of questions. Well, one of them was, well, what about your audience? Like, have you heard from your readers? Do you talk to them? And she said, yes, I do. As a matter of fact, they told me a lot more about my book that I didn't even know. And they thanked me. I got all these emails with thank yous about help with the grief that they had. And I didn't even realize when I was writing the story that it was going to touch people so much about that topic. Well, if you're familiar with Gail Foreman, or maybe you're not, Gail's first book was called If I Stay. And If I Stay became a major motion picture. And so when you think about what can you do, speaking is a great opportunity. More on the media, right? So if you're going to pitch people in the media on lots of different platforms, okay, streaming, podcasts, other types of press and media, you want to put yourself in a great position to say, I'm an author, I have a book, I can send you. And usually people will send an electronic copy of the book. So people will have a chance to read it. And the book is something that the journalists can highlight you with. It's something that's really great. If you're going to hire a publicist or a PR person, they want you to have something that they can promote. And that's what that book is for them. It's something that they can use to publicize you and to put you in a great position so that you are ready for them to actually work with your platform that you've created online and offline, and to take that information to the media to do exactly what I'm talking about, using your book as your hook. It is imperative that you do it because that's how you get media. That's how they really start to see, oh, I know this. The other thing that's really interesting that I'm going to mention here is that if you're a local author, start with your local press. Start with local journalists who do a column about books by local authors. Whatever your topic is, look at that. Go into your local booksellers, independents who we love, and yes, Barnes and Noble and other places that you may have in your neighborhood. They may have a feature quarterly that is about local authors. and an event where people can come and meet the people in the community who have written and published. Well, this is really important, right? Because then you actually have an instant event. And what do? They publicize it in the media. Your book is your hook is extends and extends and extends and extends. It's something that is really an opportunity for you when you actually use it well. Remember that leverage thing I was talking about? That's where it's at. Let's talk about your revenue stream. So part of what you are seeing in action today is what WIP Society. It's a membership. And those memberships help when you are a nonfiction person who's writing. Maybe you offer different things. You have a course, you have a coaching, or you even do consulting. And that's lots of ways that you can actually help everything grow from your book content. You can create these courses, you can create a membership, you can create the opportunity for people to work with you at a higher level in retreats. You can also think about your chapters as modules in a course. When you actually start thinking about the books that we write and you think about children's books, I remember Book Expo America in the 2010s, where basically Disney was starting to think about how could children determine the next scene they saw in the story. And I was over in their booth talking with them, and they had a prototype of an ebook where basically you could select what you wanted the next scene in the story to be. And it was fantastic. When you start to think about this, right? Revenue streams include merchandise, licensing, decks of cards, things beyond what you would think about. I want you to think if you've got a children's brand, I want you to think about sheets, towels, underoos, t-shirts, all kinds of things, stuffed animals. What would actually be something that you could do with your particular character? If you are someone who is a fiction writer, I have a client, he's fantastic, and he has a quote that is attributed to him. And he always says, it's only fiction till it happens. And Tom is fantastic because he actually writes about things, believe it or not, in his realm of thrillers, where when he writes about them, he's shocked when they actually come true. And they've come true so often that he canned that quote. What can you do as a fiction writer for your followers? How can you help them? What can you do to get them enrolled and engaged in buying your books? Well, one of my clients is Vincent Zandri. If you actually look at him on YouTube, he has a YouTube channel called The Writer's Life. I've been a guest on it more than once. And when you actually start to get to know him, he's a little rough, but he also talks about his real life journey as a writer. And he has written over 100 novels. He's actually someone who's been accoladed with awards multiple times. And it's a wonderful opportunity to look at different people, men and women. And a lot of women have been able to do this too. Revenue streams work. If you look at someone like Gabby Bernstein as an example, Gabby has books, she has decks of cards, she also has a community, she also provides courses. You can see different revenue streams in action. What would your revenue streams be? Think about it. For many women who especially write memoir, the book is about your legacy and your impact. Your stories inspire, they advocate, and there are opportunities to partner with others that are actually in this space for lots of different causes. I've helped nonprofit companies create stories, collections of stories, individual stories by the actual founder or executive director about their story to help raise money for that organization and raise donations. What is your mission? How does your book help you with that mission? For some people, they actually have a great opportunity with the book that they're using to inspire others with a parable, right? Think about the opportunities that you have with a parable. So, what's a parable? I can tell you a story about a client of mine who is a therapist who actually chose not to use her book for her own personal story personally as a memoir. I said to her, why don't you think about writing a parable about it? Because she didn't necessarily want to reveal her own personal story as I. So, as a therapist, as well as a person who's had an experience, I challenged her to create a parable. Parable is really about a fable, but parables are for adults. Think Who Moved My Cheese? And in the business world, there is the Shibumi strategy. Well, she created a parable that was called Wilhelmina and the Well. And Wilhelmina and the Well is about the shadow and things that she does as a therapist. And it also is informed by her journey. But it's not her story. It is a story written for others who are going through the same experiences to help them through it. And when you write these, you want them to be part of your mission, part of the pieces that you want to actually impact our world with. And they matter. So I'll tell you, I told you about the author of that book. I'm also going to tell you about Lisa Nix Balthazar. Okay. Lisa actually came to my workshop I'm going to tell you about at the end of our conversation today. Lisa came to my workshop with her very much younger husband, who she met at Burning Man. After her husband, her first husband, had died from cancer, and she thought she would never love again. Her book was something that she had drafted, and they came together and they really, really wanted to get this book published. They couldn't figure out if it was their storytelling. What was it? What was it that it was such a good story, right? And they had this big shiny object about Burning Man. Well, this year they celebrated 10 years of that marriage at Burning Man. Well, they came to the workshop. They actually did it. It changed everything that they did. They went home, they reworked everything. And that was 2016. And in 2019, I got an email thanking me profusely for the workshop. Why? They were signing a publishing contract that week with the publisher who had taken the book. They started writing the screenplay. And their focus was on an idea that we gave them for marketing. We said, you should really be doing sacred retreats for couples. Like, you guys have such a great story about how you met, and it was such an unusual place. And, you guys could actually take other couples to unusual places. I went out to her website to look at what she had done. Yep, you betcha. She extended that memoir into sacred retreats for couples. So it works. You can create circles for people. You can create memberships for people with a memoir. You can speak with your memoir. You can take your story lots and lots and lots of places. If it's a memoir, it's me. It's about you, right? There are so many screenplays and films that you've seen that are based on novels, right? If you look at Elizabeth Gilbert and Eat, Pray, Love, or you look at a modern story recently, there's just so many. Every year I do the Business of Adaptations panel for New York Women in Film and Television. And I am the curator. And did you know that since the very second Oscars, there has been a category about the adaptations of books and other adaptations. Adaptations are one of the most important things for Hollywood. They're books that actually provide content for them in a story that has been developed and published. And these are important, even unpublished. So it really turns out that novels give you a great opportunity to own your intellectual property for films. Film options, I don't have time to talk about that today, but film options are where you get paid to option your story for film. And that option renews. So it's a revenue stream just as much as it is exciting to actually be optioned. But having that book, that story, that novel gives you lots of opportunities to do that and venues to go do it in. Nonfiction books are great. They are great when you actually extend them into programs for the people who love, love, love your books and love your work. There are lots of people like Gabby, who I mentioned, who actually have the ability to turn what they've created into a global coaching platform. When you start to see that, you see a lot of women doing that because it works. It actually allows women to get not only a framework, the book, for what they might get from the actual coaching, whether it's group coaching, whether it's individual coaching, or how you choose to do it, or a big, large retreat. So I want you to think about for yourself, which hook fits you and your book? Which hook fits you and your book? I'm going to put these in the chat. I'm going to take this down for a moment because I really want you to consider which hook fits you. And how would you actually do it if it was more than one? Because your hook could just take you in so many different directions, right? It's so exciting. It's inciting as well. Well, I could do this. I could do this. I could do that. Yes, you could. Prioritize them. Understand what feeds the other. If you have a book, it feeds all six. If you have a brand, well, that brand probably is going to feed your business. It's going to feed it all. But having that brand solid is really great. Colors, language, how do you communicate with people? and where is your audience, right? What's your business? Which hook is going to fit your business? Is it speaking? Is it a revenue stream? Is it additional exposure, visibility, being able to be public facing in the media? Are you a resource? Do you know how to be a resource for the media? A source for the media is something that's really important, especially when you have a book, especially when you can hold up that credibility to the media and say, I can answer that. Are you just trying to make more money? How are you going to do it? There's so many pieces in your leverage that can allow you to make more money. Sponsorships are great. You have to have something to sponsor, right? Are you going to actually create a conference? Are you going to create a podcast? What is it they're going to sponsor? And most of all, what are they going to get as sponsors? And what are they going to give? You have a great demonstration of that here in Women in Publishing. Sponsors come in, they give, and they receive. It's a wonderful, wonderful way of supporting women with what they need. How will you actually leave your legacy with your book? I want you to think about this for a moment. How many dead people are on your shelf? I always say to people who write great books, it doesn't matter if they're fiction, nonfiction, children's, poetry, we love them. In fact, I was talking with someone the other day about Maya Angelou and one of her poems, which is one of my favorites. It's called Continue. And yes, Maya Angelou is and was a beloved writer, and her writings still apply today. And I had the privilege of meeting her at the National Book Awards. So it really, legacy works. Legacy is something that we build on for many, many, many years. And we appreciate the books that we have. How will your legacy work for you? It really helps you a lot, right? The book can really take you all the places that you said you wanted to go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the slides down. I'm going to look in the questions, and I'm going to do my best to go through some of the webinar chat. And I think, Nikki, I think one of the women in publishing will answer your question that's in the chat there, or that's in the Q&A. Because I think, part of what we want to think about is, what questions do you have about using your book as your hook? I feel like I've given you quite a fire hose of different ways that you can do it. And if you actually start to think about, what are you going to do? What questions do you have? What questions can I help you with? As far as how are you going to get to where you want to go? Because I think that that's really something that's going to extend to you exactly what you want to be able to do. And I want you to think big. You can actually get started by doing things in such a way so that, oh, I could do that. I could definitely do that. And you know what? That's how you want to start. Is it important to you to extend and just say, you know what? I'm going to go down to my local library and I'm going to talk to them about doing a presentation there. I've never done that before, but you know what? It's something that I want to do. And I feel really strongly about it. And I want to be able to do it in such a way so that I can make an impact on people. I can introduce them to my book. I can help them better understand what the book is about and why they would be interested in it. And maybe, just maybe, the library might be interested in buying it and featuring it. Because, well, that would be pretty cool now, wouldn't it? Yes, that's how you do it. You basically have to become the advocate for what it is that you have. And when you do that, that becomes something that you can really, really win with. And it's very exciting, but it's also, I understand, very scary. And so what I want you to remember is that when you actually think about what are you going to do with your book, how are you going to leverage it, you absolutely want to make sure that you put yourself in a great position to say, I'm going to do this, right? That's really where you want to be with your book, because that's how you can make it actually impact people. So Anais asked, what do you mean by sponsorship? So sponsorship is something where people provide support. Usually it's financially, but it's also in their efforts to help you publicize what it is that you're doing. Sponsorship, if you think about sponsorship, think about what you watch either on television, or if you're watching cable, or if you're watching, for example, a movie before you actually see things. Sponsorship is not ads, it's actually a different form of support. Sponsorship, if you watch, for example, something like public television, they have great sponsors for what they do. They have foundations that actually give endowments or money, right? Sponsors oftentimes will provide a voice that helps whatever they're sponsoring not only go beyond what it is, but their voice, their brand, their information, their platform is actually publicized by the people that they are sponsoring. So usually you want a sponsor that is aligned. They are the people that are aligned with what you're doing. They actually are aligned with supporting what you do, and you would support them with what they would do. And it really is something that works very, very well. I don't have time to go into a lot of detail about sponsorship because I feel like that's a session. But that's maybe something that you're interested in. And I'm sure that that's something that during this season perhaps could be addressed in one of the particular wonderful opportunities you'll have this year with Women in Publishing. Or you can talk to me about it and I'll show you how to do that at the end. I'm going to go to another question. Please put your questions in the Q&A because that's where I am right now. I am going to Kelsey. Kelsey asked, how much do you consider these things when writing your book before it's published? Oh, one of my favorite questions of all time. Thank you so much for asking this, right? So if you're a speaker and you're out speaking and you actually base a book on one of your talks, you can actually build in what? A link to the talk you gave that the book was based on, right? So one of my clients actually came to me. She had been invited to do a TED Talk as an adjunct professor at a college here in New York. And when she told me that, I said, well, tell me a little about that. Well, actually, she was teaching about women's studies, and she had a book that she was working with that actually was about stereotypes. And I said, well, okay, well, what's the TED Talk you chose to actually speak about at this event that happened at your college? She said, well, I chose to speak about PMS because I thought it was universal. Well, by the time she met me and we went out and we looked at, what was going on with the talk, because she was monitoring it, it was part of how she got a book deal. She had over 1.25 million views on that talk. And then she had the book, right? And then I took over not only marketing, but helping her advocate with the publisher to nail the publisher down to publish the darn book. Because it basically, her literary agent actually had to step away. And I said, instead of trying to get another literary agent, just work with the publisher, nail them down, let's get a date, and let's get your marketing going so that you can actually work your plan for the marketing, right? One of the things I did with my very first book, to answer your question, is my very first book was Dating Your Money. It was how to build a long-lasting relationship with your money in 8 easy steps. I wrote it for women, and it actually like launched off the charts. The only person who was actually publishing and talking to women about money at the time was Susie Orman, who was not particularly well received. And so part of what I did in that book, which was part of its appeal, was I built into every chapter, go to my website, get this from my website, get this resource. Well, guess what happens today? In a lot of books, that's what they do, is they incorporate either in footnotes or they actually put it in line. Go get this resource on my website. In fact, I'm doing this right now with a real estate book that's actually being released on Tuesday. And in each chapter, there's a particular resource, and the person is now sent to the website because I said, well, why don't you actually set up this free resources idea that works for so many other published authors? And so it really works. If you integrate it, you'll engage people, you'll make them sticky, and you'll take them everywhere you want them to go. Okay, let's do another one. Do I have till 3:30 or 3 o'clock, my friends who are supporting me? Just let me know, please.
3 o'clock.
Okay, that's what I thought. So then we have the last question here. My nonfiction book is about race and representation on television, which has been, about race and representation on television has been out for almost a year. Okay, the book's been out. So how can you use that to try to be a consultant in Hollywood? So you have to build your brand around your idea of the book, right? What is the message? So if you wrote a book about race and representation, then you have to become that person who talks about it, right? So one of my clients is someone who actually was in a documentary about the stereotypes of African American women. And she actually is a Black comedian, and she's fantastic. And one of the things that she was able to do, she's also an author and she's also a best-selling author, is she was able to leverage that as someone who basically can go in, and she created a company, a whole company that actually works with diversity in different companies. And so for her, her focus was companies. When you actually talk about what you want to do, you're talking about Hollywood. So you need to actually break into that marketplace. And that's something that I can't do in this time, but it's certainly something I could always talk to you more about. I do want to share just a couple more things before we end. I want to give you some information about some things that you mentioned, Alexa, that you asked me to share. I also want you to think about what's next for you, right? So I want you to figure out what's the message of what you have. I want you to figure out how you're going to leverage your book strategically. What are the goals that you have? If you don't have goals, it's okay. I want you to just think about for yourself, 3, 6, 9, 12 months from now, what are your goals? And how does your book align with the goals that you have? And the most important part is keep showing up and keep sharing what you've got, because people want it. They're seeking it. And that's one of the most important things that you really want to know, is that when you write your book, you write it for somebody else. You write it so that they'll benefit. And it's the gift you give. You give of yourself. You write your book and you help somebody. If you need help with your book, I offer office hours. I allow people to actually sign up and hire me to talk to me about anything: writing, editing, marketing, publishing, and taking that story or book into the media, into Hollywood, into the Broadway stage, all opportunities that you can think about. I offer 2 workshops. These are the dates right now. I have a cruise next year that I will tell you about very quickly. And I have the next bestseller workshop. The next bestseller workshop is at the end of this month. It is virtual. If you go to thenextbestseller.com, you can use that QR code to get there. And if you are women in publishing and you're here, you can use WIP 10 to actually get 10% off your ticket. In that workshop, you can also get a VIP ticket, or you can actually meet with a Hollywood producer for film, television, streaming, Broadway producer, literary agent, editor, or publisher for books. So if that's your objective and you want to understand, how do I talk to them? How do I pitch them? How do I get access to them? This is the workshop you want. We only do it once a year. This is our 12th year doing it. We are endorsed by Entrepreneur Magazine as the destination for the next bestseller idea. And we love doing it. And it's people from all across the literary and entertainment industries. So if that's of interest, please take a look at that. Please email me if you have questions. The Waves of Inspiration is a cruise next summer. It is August. It is for the opportunity to go from Barcelona to Rome. And on August 16th next year is the next total eclipse of the sun. And you will see it from the bow of the ship. And it won't happen again for 50 years. So if you're like me, I don't plan to be around in 50 years. You can actually email me about this cruise. We have a limited number, and I'm proud to announce that we are adding Jessica Berg of Rosecliff Literary as the literary agent who's going to be on this cruise during this wonderful trip for teaching with me during the actual writing part, during the days at sea. So if this is something that you are interested in, please reach out. You will see it online under Your Book is Your Hook. And I am super excited to host it on Virgin Voyager, which is a fantastic cruise line. The last things I want to show you is that I do have a newsletter. And that newsletter is something that you can get on very easily by, we'll send out that link to you. And the last thing, this is most important, is if you have a question for me, you didn't ask it today, it comes up while you're looking at, oh, what could I actually do? I offer a 20-minute consultation with me. You have to complete this form because I want to learn more about you and your project so that when I talk to you during the 20 minutes, they're the most 20-minute production conversation that you've had about your book. And I love, love, love talking with you. These are all the places you can find me wherever you are. If you're on LinkedIn, if you're on Facebook, if you're on Instagram, I'd love to connect with you. And thank you very much again, Women in Publishing. And Alexa, I love all of you. And I am so happy to continue to be a sponsor this year, and especially the premier sponsor. I think I hit right on 3 o'clock.
You did. That was perfect. Thank you so much, Jennifer. This was fantastic. Thank you for sponsoring us this year. You guys, I'm going to drop the link for our sponsor page in the chat. Please check them out and please support them because they are why our prices are so reasonable, because they support you guys. So thank you, Jennifer, so much for being here with us. Oh,
you're so welcome. And I'm just gonna, if it's okay, I'm just gonna put our newsletter link in the chat there. If you're interested, I would love to have you join us too.
Awesome. Thank you.